Do I think preservation rhinoplasty has a place? Sure. To use it as a marketing tool like it's easy and it's going to give you a better result, I think is fooling the public, and I don't really love that.
So welcome to another episode of the Rhinoplasty Podcast with me, Dr. Cameron McIntosh. We are in the month of March, and the theme for the month is the influencers, and it's proudly brought to us by Allergan. We all familiar with Juvederm and botox, etc. So we're looking forward to chatting about that. Now, my guest today is someone I've been following for a long time. I feel like I'm a bit of a junior interviewing someone who doesn't just do one, but runs two podcasts, and is a highly influential person around the world in plastic surgery and facial plastic surgery. So it's a great honor to have Dr. Jay Calvert with us today. Jay, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's great to be here, Cameron. Thanks for having me.
So Jay, there's so much I want to chat to you about. One of the highlights was you leading the Rhinoplasty Society's team that won the talk at World Rhinoplasty Day 2 years ago. You put a great team together, eh? What did that feel like for you?
I did. It was really, that was a very hard set of, it's a hard choice of who to put on the team because I have so many incredible Rhinoplasty Society surgeons. And I really, when it came down to it, I picked everybody for a very specific reason. And it turns out Jeff Marcus kind of, he showed up as the top dog. And, who could blame him? He's an amazing rhinoplasty surgeon. And as the chief at Duke, he really has the experience to demonstrate what he does very well.
No, he's just amazing. Eh? So tell me, before we start talking about like plastic surgery and stuff, you've got a few things that stand out to me on your Instagram. Is the one is your passion for sports and keeping fit and holistically looking after yourself. Together with that is the Dr. Hockey Podcast. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, the Dr. Hockey Podcast is it's a total fan with a microphone hobby. And,
okay.
I am a huge hockey fan. And I started it after I had helped the Maloof brothers write their pitch to get the Vegas Golden Knights to get their team in Las Vegas. And I wound up, sort of sending Joe Maloof an email that I think was later sort of cut up a little bit and put out as the press release when they got the team. But I really helped them understand the difference between basketball and hockey because they had owned the Sacramento Kings.
Wow.
And now that along with Foley, who's the big, Foley Vineyards, and he's the big money guy behind it. But he really wanted the Maloofs because they knew how to own a team. Anyway, I helped them with that. And afterwards, they said, you have to do something with your hockey knowledge. You know so much. And so I didn't really know what to do. So I started a podcast and I just started talking about, hockey and what's going on in the NHL. And then I got a call from Podcast One. And they said, we'd like you to be our hockey guy. And so Dr. Hockey Podcast sits on the Podcast One network to this day.
That's cool. Because I did a lot of sports. I was an Olympic canoeist. And I immediately, when I saw it, I thought, hey, are you doctoring these hockey guys who smash their faces up or not?
Well, sure. I mean, I see, it's interesting. I see more of their wives, mothers, and girlfriends for surgery than I do them. They're not too concerned about the way they look. I can tell you that right now. But they definitely are concerned about, getting good plastic surgery for their family. So I do I know a lot of the hockey players from that circle, and it actually spilled over to the Major League Baseball kind of world as well. So I have a lot of the Dodgers and the Angels that come to me, and it's great. The downside's all hush hush. They just talk amongst themselves.
Yeah.
It's not like I go to a dentist who has pictures on the wall, magazine covers signed by every celebrity you could imagine in Hollywood. Thanks for the great teeth, John.
Yeah.
And they just don't do that with their plastic surgeon. I'm sort of a well-kept secret, I guess.
Yeah, but Jay, I mean, on that point, I remember a cool phrase that Rod Rorick said to me is everyone's world famous on their own website. I think there's a lot of self-promotion out there, and I don't think you need that. I mean, you're a world-class surgeon, so why do you have to go and put a photograph of some celebrity who hasn't put in, 2 decades of work to get where you're at?
No, it's true. I don't need that. I'm very fortunate. I wake up grateful every day for the practice that I have and who my patients are. I have great patients. I have an incredible practice. It's very busy, and it's as busy as I want it to be, that's for sure. And I mentor the fellows and the medical, not the medical students, but the residents who come through. I have a lot of upside to what I do in terms of being able to teach, and it's really fantastic. I 100% cannot complain at all.
So I want to digress there for a second. What got you into, as a youngster, deciding to first become a doctor and then a plastic surgeon? And you got such a wild field of plastic surgery. A lot of the people on this podcast obviously focused on rhinoplasty, and you do a lot of rhinoplasty, but you do a lot of body plastics as well. Tell us the journey of how you got there.
Well, I was influenced mostly in high school by my high school girlfriend's father, who was a vascular surgeon, a guy named Bruce Brenner. And he was an incredible guy, and he helped people in just every way you can imagine. And he was just a really good guy.
Yeah.
And so I had two passions when I was in high school, and I was either going to be a rock star or I was going to be a doctor. And I didn't know which one was going to win out.
Well,
and
you married both together now. You became a rock star doctor.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of still, I can always play music, but I couldn't always become a doctor. So in college, when I was at Vanderbilt, I knew I wanted to go to med school, so I became a molecular biology major, and I was still playing music a lot. We had a band called the Sleepwalkers, and it was with my high school buddy, my drummer from high school, and then this 6'5" gigantic artist from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, a guy named John Calteka. And Calteka would walk in the room, and everybody would just look at him like he was just a presence, like Ted Nugent or something. And our band was amazing. So we sent out all kinds of demo tapes, and we got back like a letter from Sony Records. They're like, okay, we like you. We'll send you out on the road with some of our bands. We'll do like 6 months, and we'll pay for like your room, board, all that stuff, and we're going to test you guys and see how it looks. And literally all three of us were like, nope. And that was literally our big break. It was right in front of us, and we did not take it. And to this day, I don't think there's any one of us that regrets not taking it.
Wow.
I've never regretted doing this. I love plastic surgery. I love being a doctor. It's kept my brain in incredible shape. But, I see, just as an aside, I'm over at this rock and roll fantasy camp with my son this weekend, which is why I'm in the office on a Sunday. And he's playing with Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains and Kim Thayil from Soundgarden and Mike Kroger from Nickelback. I mean, the people that are at this rock and roll camp with my son, and they're all in bands that are still extremely relevant, but their big days came and went with the 90s and the early 2000s. They're still jamming. They're still loving it. They love what they do. The drummer from Jane's Addiction, Perkins, he's just like, I'm 54 years old. I've never had a real job. I love this. He was so totally excited to be there. The dude from Whitesnake. I mean, the guitarist from Queensryche, Sarzo. These guys are just they're as into what they do today as they were when they were playing stadium tours.
Wow. Well, one of the other things that I see on your Instagram feed is the quotes I love your quotes that you post, and to me, I look at it and you also haven't ever had a real job to me. You're loving what you do, man.
I don't have a real job. This is definitely not a real job. I love it. I've never felt like I've gone to work. I never wake up in the morning like, I can't believe I got to go to work today. I wake up and say, I'm going to go help some people. I'm going to do what I love doing.
Yeah. I'm
going to teach. I'm going to educate. I've always felt that way, and I, in a way, I really connect with these, especially with Jerry Cantrell. He and I, got to chit chat for a minute. And I just felt like, this guy just loves being a rock star, and he's totally into it, totally into writing, and he's totally into mentoring. It's very cool.
Awesome. Let's change tack again, and tell me, how did the Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery podcast come about?
Well, this was sort of I felt like I had to take that real estate. Like after I got into the Dr. Hockey podcast and we were getting 10, 15,000 downloads an episode, I kind of said, man, I better do something in plastic surgery, because this is a great medium. And I just kind of looked at my associate down the hall, Dr. Millicent Ravello, who is just a really great plastic surgeon. She does mostly body stuff. I said, hey, we should do a podcast, and we should talk about all the things that our patients need to know and put it on these podcasts, and then we can actually refer them to it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. So like when I know I have like an infected implant or something coming up, I say, let's do a podcast about this. And then like my patient can like refer back to it, and then it all adds up. And when patients kind of come through the website and say, hey, I want a consult for a rhinoplasty, it's like, great. You're going to talk to my coordinator. By the way, here's a podcast about primary rhinoplasty, or here's one about revision rhinoplasty, or I broke my nose. Here's one about trauma. And they can go there and they can listen to all the issues, and then they always kind of get hooked and they pick all the other little episodes that relate to them. And people, they like our podcast. We have a pretty good following on it. It's not like Dr. Hockey, but it's getting there. And you know, we'll see. We keep pushing it and building it. We're going to do a little bit of PR around it to try to get it, you know, a little more popular. But we do get a lot of patients that come in after they listen to it. And I've had consults where patients have come in and said, okay, I listened to your revision rhinoplasty podcast, I listened to the rib graft podcast, and I listened to your tip reconstruction podcast. So I'm ready to book, but these are my questions. And literally I haven't even said hello yet.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah, they're already like, they're pre-booked. They've got all the information. They understand. They've looked at the befores and afters, and it just adds up for them. Like, I have to do this.
Well, we've got like two big groups that listen to this podcast, both like from a surgeon side, but also a lot of patients, and it's listened to all over the world. So how do people get hold of the podcast to listen to you?
I mean, mostly what I do is I send them to, the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or even Google Podcasts. It's all over the place. But I'll just send them a direct link. Literally, when they chime in for their consult, or if somebody calls in, my team will send them links to it, and we tell them to subscribe, because once they subscribe, they get more information about more topics that they didn't even know they needed to know about, like how to maintain your skin and what lasers can do for you and all the new liposuction techniques. And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about that people wouldn't necessarily know that they needed to know. And it's very helpful. And we actually get a lot of direct messages on our Instagram from patients who say, I just had my rhinoplasty in Houston and your podcast was so helpful and my surgeon was great, but the information that I got on your podcast really made it much more comfortable for me.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful.
That's cool. Okay. So a topic I want to chat to you about a bit is liquid rhinoplasty. What are some of your thoughts around that?
I mean, I have a few, cases every 6 months or so where patients come in and say, I want to do an injectable rhinoplasty. And if they're a good candidate for it, I'll do it. I'm not really known for it. So it's usually somebody that's been referred in. I don't advertise that I do that. I don't have it, on my website, really, I don't think. But it's mostly just where, the patient says, I don't want to do rhinoplasty. Can't you do this or do that? And I said, okay, yeah, it looks like that'll work. But a lot of times the big miss in liquid rhinoplasty is people don't understand that when it's over, they're going to have a bigger nose. They don't get that. Like we're adding filler to your nose. It will be bigger.
Exactly. But how much?
That's a big misconnection. I think a lot of the people that do liquid rhinoplasty as like one of their primary things, they don't ever really explain that. So these patients get these fillers in their nose, and it's like, and now it's bigger.
Yes, exactly. And tell me, in terms of fillers and Botox, etc., on the face, do you do much? Is that a big part of your practice?
I really try to send all that to my PAs, my physician assistants, and my nurse injectors. I do some. I'm always sort of shocked when there's one on my schedule for me to do some filler or whatever, but I have some patients that just want me to do it. They want the doctor, and that's that. I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with it. I don't line up a day where I do Botox and fillers. I mean, I think I might do that, because I do have a lot of patients, and if I were to dedicate a day to it, then it would be a lot easier for me, that rather than popping it into the middle of 8 or 9 consults for the day or something.
Okay. In terms of one of the hot topics in rhinoplasty at the moment is preservation rhinoplasty. Have you started to incorporate that into your practice or not? Because it's very interesting for me how some people are jumping on a bandwagon of using it to market themselves, and yet it's, I think, technically quite a difficult operation to actually get right. So there's a lot of talk and cross-pollination between like structural and preservation, etc. What are some of your honest thoughts about this?
Well, I think preservation rhinoplasty is it's not new. This is an operation concept from the 1850s, before the Civil War in the U.S. So the fact that it's kind of being dusted off, revisited, and looked at, I think is super cool. Is it useful? Sure. I think if you have the perfect candidate for it and you can say, well, the dorsum of this nose is perfect. It just needs to be lowered. And we can do that by stripping out some of the septum or bringing it down without actually doing anything to the hump itself. That's great. It seems to me, and this is just me, a very long way to go for a short slide. I also feel like you're trying to fit a octagonal peg into a round hole. And, it's already pretty easy to manage the bones and the dorsum and the septum with the techniques that are kind of tried and true. So have I done a preservation? Sure. Of course, I've tried it. Am I happy with the results I've gotten on them? Yeah, I am. The only reason that I'm happy is because of my patient selection. I am very, very fastidious about who I can do this for and get an A+ result. Because I can't have a lot of B+ results walking around Beverly Hills. I can't still have residual humps. Now, why don't you ask the next question, say, how many revisions have you done on people that have had preservation rhinoplasty? Now, there's a topic that'll result in a publication because it's a lot. And it's a lot that have residual humps. And it's a lot that didn't get enough on the tip. And it's a lot that still can't breathe because their high septal deviation didn't get treated. So, do I think preservation rhinoplasty has a place? Sure. To use it as a marketing tool like it's easy and it's going to give you a better result, I think is fooling the public, and I don't really love that. So that, to me, is an issue. I don't fault people for using different marketing techniques. I'm sure I've done it myself. But I think that a technique isn't the selling point. I think the result is the selling point. You want to get beautiful results. And if your practice is such that, you get a certain population of patients that all have sort of humps that when they're lowered, they're better, and you can do preservation rhinoplasties on them, that's great. I'm in Los Angeles. I get every ethnicity under the sun coming into this place. I get every kind of disaster revision coming into this place. And so the preservation rhinoplasty for me is a rare occurrence. But I have done 3 and they've turned out great. So that's my take home on that.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So your top 3 things that you will tell a patient that they need to think about before a rhinoplasty?
In terms of their getting the result or whether they should do it or any of those things?
In terms of like the psychological side of doing the rhinoplasty, like trying to question the motivations behind it.
Well, that's always a big discussion. That's sort of my opener. Especially when I see somebody in their 40s or 50s that wants a rhinoplasty, I sort of say, why now? And I get them to really hone in on what it is they're trying to achieve. So I kind of go through a little bit of a routine. It's not, it's done in conversation, but my questions are all about, why do you want to do this? What are you looking to achieve? What would be an optimal result for you? And what if it's not right? I always say there's a lot of revision rhinoplasty. I have 50% of my practice is revisions. Mm-hmm. What if you wind up in that category? Can you handle it? Will you be okay with that? I know that's not the goal, but somebody winds up in that 15% of all comers for rhinoplasty that need revisional surgery. And so those questions do allow me to kind of get a sense for whether this patient can, do they know what they're looking for? If they can't tell me what they're looking for, we're done. Yeah. I mean, I need them to be able to articulate it. At least show me a photo of some nose they like, something. And they kind of have to have a sense of humor. They got to be able to understand that. Like, look, you might need something worked out about this. You might need something. And if I can't make a patient laugh, I don't operate on them.
That's cool.
Not that I'm a funny guy, but they'll still have some sort of laugh of some kind, and that's a big issue.
I wanted to ask you for some funny stories in your career.
Now, well, what kind of podcast is this? Because there's a lot of funny stories.
This podcast, anything goes.
It's about rhinoplasty.
Well, keep it in rhinoplasty. Let's not go lower down in the body.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a funny story that came up with one of the hospital administrators from when I was in Pittsburgh, and I was looking at a job there. And this is, I don't want to say which hospital or anything like that, but this was back when I was a resident. And the guy said, well, what would you need in terms of, we'd really like you to stay on here, and what would you need in terms of the setup for, I need this kind of a clinic. Well, and I need a nurse and blah, blah, blah. And we went through everything, and then, and what kind of salary? He's like, yeah, I think we can handle that. And then he goes, well, and how much does it cost for us to get the plastic? I said, what? He said, how much does it cost for the plastic? He goes, you are a plastic surgeon. I was like, okay, hang on a second. You really don't even know what I do you? And he really didn't. He had no clue. And it was it was one of those things that was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
That was one of the funniest moments in my career in terms of like somebody just absolutely having no idea what it is that I do.
Wow. So now you don't have to deal with hospital manager, do you? Do you have your own clinic?
No.
Right.
No, I mean, I have to maintain privileges in order to have our, surgery center here that's in our building where I operate. I have to have privileges at a local hospital in case something happens. You have to have a transfer agreement. So I still have to do cases at Cedars-Sinai and Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach. And,
awesome.
I don't really go there unless there's some, patient that's, got some kind of kidney issue or has a pacemaker that we can't deal with in the surgery center. And, so I do a few cases in the hospital, but no, I'm my own boss, and that's the best. It's better to be that way.
That's awesome. So, Jay, two things around about the junior surgeons who are listening. There's always interest for guys to want to go and visit these influential mentors and stuff. Are people able to reach out to you and actually come and visit you in LA and see what you're doing and join you in the OR or not?
They've been not able to because of COVID. And we have probably, 2 or 3 visitors a year from abroad, but it's usually pretty difficult because I have fellows and I have the USC residents. And so I always tell people, like, it's not really a great experience to come here because you're kind of boxed out. I mean, we put the video up and all that, but we still do have visitors. We have them email in, and then I have them go through a thing. We need letters from their supervisors and all that sort of stuff that we make sure that it's actually a surgeon that's coming to visit us. And so it's a bit of a process, but we do have visitors every now and again.
Cool. Okay, so to try and use kind of a sporting analogy for this, again, for the junior guys. In South Africa, like when we play rugby, there's no defense and offense. You do everything. But in the States, there's often a defense and offense. And my question is, in terms of the rhinoplasty, where it comes to advice for like offensive stuff towards a surgeon of, you have to do this, you have to do this, and this, that's fine, you can learn that. But it's the defense, the stuff you must watch out for, which is important. So what are some of the pitfalls that guys who are kind of starting their career must watch out for, because they can get into trouble through that?
Well, I'm going to say something that is not going to be very popular right now, because one of the biggest problems that I see is when a surgeon should tell a patient no, and when they know and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and your spidey senses are going off, and you shouldn't operate on this patient. You need to say no, even though you want to help and you want to do the case. You want to do all those things. The most powerful and most useful word for me in terms of preventing problems has been no. And the times that I haven't said no, I've regretted it. And I've had big problems because of that. So I would recommend no. The other thing is you have to have some sort of psychiatric screening on your intake forms. psychiatric disease leads people to want to change things on their body, and they aren't there for the right reasons. And if it is, a delusional issue or something that you miss, you're going to really pay for it. And I definitely have. I've had patients that, and the problem is a lot of the patients learn as they go through consults that, oh, I can't talk about that. I had a patient who hid their psychiatric history from me and has wound up being just one of the biggest pains in my entire life. And he's bipolar and had all kinds of problems and did not disclose that on their intake forms. And so you have to kind of probe a little bit more. And you have to have some questions on your intake form that will elucidate those issues. Because if you operate on these people and they're not in the right mind frame to take care of what needs to be done, you're going to have problems. So those are big warnings for those who are getting into rhinoplasty. And it's really any plastic surgery too.
So, okay. So following up on that. So say you're starting to get concerned, and this is somebody you're not going to want to operate on because on the one hand, there's this, I'm actually technically not skilled enough to do the operation, but this is a patient I don't want to operate on the other hand. How do you break that bad news to the patient? Do you try and send them to your arch enemy down the road, or it's difficult? I mean, this comes with experience,
Yeah, I say I'm not the surgeon for you. It's just not a match. It's kind of like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to swipe left on this one. It's like not happening. You cannot, you got to move on. Next one. And I don't think that the patients they get it. If they know that it's not going to work, they don't want you to operate on them if you don't want to operate on them. I do send them to people that I think they'll be right for, quite honestly, not my arch enemy. I don't send them to people that I know will do their operation and not do a good job. I send them to people that maybe there'll be a match. And then the people that just shouldn't have rhinoplasty, I just say, this isn't a good idea for you. And I just say, I don't give them any referral because they really shouldn't have surgery.
Yeah. But Jay, I mean, that's the cool thing of the integrity that you have, and it's good to keep that. So another question in terms of, I think this could be interesting to the listeners. What percentage of patients who end up getting a consultation with you for rhinoplasty actually end up on the table and getting the surgery?
It's high. It's about 85%. And the reason is that my referral patterns and the ways that people wind up in my practice is that they're in the right place for what they need. I don't have like a lot of Google ads, and I don't have a lot of marketing that's, bringing in sort of like, let's sort out the wheat from the chaff kind of consults. And we have a consult fee that's not high, but it's enough that people don't shop. It's enough that they're like, oh, I'm not going to go there and check that out. It's just, that's too much money for just a flyby. So, I really get patients in that are right for me, which is really good.
Oh, okay. So my last question. You are in the center of plastic surgery in the world, really, with some super rich people there. What is for you the most difficult part about being a plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills?
Well, there's a lot of challenges, that's for sure. But one of the most difficult parts of that is managing the business of this surgery center in my practice in such a way that that it runs smoothly. It's really a constant tweaking and tightening and changing, and people come in and go out, and you have people that folks that have to move to another part of the country and you have to replace them. So having everybody in my practice on the same page so that the messaging to the patients is consistent, that's the most challenging part. Now, I've gotten very good at that because when I interview people for jobs, I know within like 3 minutes whether I'm going to hire them or not. And it's also the same with our fellows. When we interview these fellows, I know whether I want them hanging around here for a year or whether they just aren't going to mesh with my patients. So that's the hard part. The other part that is challenging is that everybody knows everybody here. And so anybody that winds up in my practice is somebody. They're connected to somebody. It could be, some, huge Hollywood movie producer's nephew who's married to, some person that I know from, back in Nashville. And so it's such a small connected community. And so you want to be your best. You want to do your best all the time. You want to be empathetic and compassionate, and you want the patients to really see who you are. And so the way that I do that is I just present total authenticity at all times. It's just easier to be yourself, tell the truth, and be honest, and say, you can't be my patient. You have to leave. And so there's some harsh messaging sometimes that has to come out, and then there's also some very positive messaging, and so that's why it's really worked. The podcast for me has been very useful, because if you listen to the Beverly Hills Plastic Surgery podcast, you'll hear Dr. Ravello and I just shooting the breeze like we are right now. And it's just two plastic surgeons talking about what we do, the way we do it, with our gripes and our loves and our ups and downs of what we do. And patients really appreciate that, because they get a sense of who you are. And that's most important. I mean, there are so many guys that are so mechanical and contrived and strange about how they communicate with patients. My patients don't like that. And so I wind up with patients that like what it is that I do. And that's why I think it's working very well, because you get the people that are best for you. It's also the question why what everyone says, oh, you're training all these fellows and they're all staying around Los Angeles. Don't you feel like you're training your competition? And I said, well, no, because their patients aren't right for me. There's 17 million people here. If you can't get patients with 17 million people in the LA basin, I don't think that you should be a plastic surgeon then, because it doesn't matter. If 400 plastic surgeons showed up tomorrow, I'd still get the patients that need to be with me. That's how it works.
Exactly. Competition's a great thing. Yeah. So, Jay, honestly, it's just...
There is no competition. The only competition, Cameron, is you the day before. You're in competition with the guy that you were yesterday. You need to be better tomorrow. And that's the key. And you have today to do that. So it's just... You shouldn't be competing with anybody. You shouldn't even care what everybody else is doing. You should be focused on yourself and your results and what you do. And everybody else can do whatever they have to do, but you have to stay true to what you want to do and how you want to do it. So I always say there is no competition.
Yeah, that's great, Jay. Jay, on behalf of everybody around the world, the guys have been listening to this, shout out Elegant. Guys, thank you for making this podcast happen. Really appreciate it. But Jay, genuinely, it's a breath of fresh air talking to you. I'm enthused, man. Thank you for what you're doing for education around the world, honestly. Thank you for the effort you put in for World Rhinoplasty Day, just taking time off when you should be with your son today to be on this podcast. Appreciate it, and all the best for you for the rest of the year.
All right, I'll see you soon, Cameron. Thanks again.